I didn't say, what are you looking so sad about, Jam?
Man, I'm surprised at you. I mean, I'm really insulted of it. That's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talk about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I went on a bomb of my tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
Well, you've been on the tour. Oh.
What's happening, my people? It's Cass Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Miss Cass, crush the legend. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cass Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, Willie Pep versus Sandy Sadler. Willie Pep versus Sandy Sadler. Okay, we're going to go back and look at this. We're going to look at some series for a few shows coming up now. Willie Pep and Sandy Sadler had a 4-fight series. We're going to take a look at that today, mainly the second and third fights. The 4th fight was a debacle, arguably the dirtiest fight in history. So we're going to take a brief look at it. But the second and third fights, we're going to take a good look at them today. But how's everyone? Salute to Crush, the legend. 6:30 Monday through Friday with the coffee and the donuts. Okay, it's Tuesday, still early in this big week of boxing history. Highlight of boxing history today. We're going to look at the currently top 10 active welterweights. Mike Grimm. What's up, Mike? Willie Pepper versus Sandy Sadler today. Sound like an idea I got from Al Booger a while back. He asked, why don't I look at some old fights? So we're going to look at some today. And then we're going to look at some other great featherweights too, like Salvador Sanchez and Danny Little Red Lopez. So let's get into the highlight of boxing history. The top 10 active welterweights. We are down to 147. So let's get into that. There we go. Looking for Boots. Yeah. But Boots has going to 154, but his last fight was at welterweight. So I'm still putting him with the welterweights. Okay. But first, let's look at a brief history of the welterweight division. Let's do that today. A brief history before we look at the top 10. Now, the beginnings of the welterweight division trace back to England, 1889. When the first created weight limit at welterweight is believed to have been 145 pounds. Officially, it was established in 1909 by the NSC at 147 pounds and consequently accepted by the New York State Athletic Commission and National Boxing Association in 1920. Those were the two big sanctioning bodies of the period, the New York State Athletic Commission and the National Boxing Association. Now, American Patty Duffy defeated Tom Meadows on March 29th, 1889, and became what is believed to be the first welterweight champion of the world. The WBA and WBC both recognized only one welterweight champion for a few years when they came into existence in 1962 and 1963. The first holder being Emil Griffith, after he beat Argentinian Jorge Fernandez on December 8th, 1962. American boxer Henry Armstrong holds the longest title reign in the welterweight division with 19 consecutive successful title defenses. 19, wow. Now, some notable welterweight champions throughout history include Ted Kid Lewis, Jack Britton, Henry Armstrong, Fritzy Zivik, Sugar Ray Robinson, Emil Griffith, Sugar Ray Leonard, Tommy Hearns, Marlon Starling, Buddy McGirt, Colonel Whitaker, Felix Trinidad, Oscar De La Hoya, and Sugar Shane Mosley. Okay, so now let's look at the top 10. Okay, top 10 welterweights. And top 10 in the welterweight division. Okay. This back on the chart because it's time to look. Okay, there we go. Okay, I had to put that phone back on the charger. Let it charge up a little bit. I got this in my notes. I wrote this. Okay, top 10, just very brief little talk about them. Top 10 currently active welterweights. Okay, number 1, Jerron Boots Ennis, because he's going to 54, but he hadn't fought at 54 yet, so I put it, he's still at welterweight as far as we're concerned today. Now, Ennis has likely fought his last fight in the 147-pound division, but he's the last one to hold the IBF and WBA championships, okay? 34-0, 1 no contest, 30 knockouts, 88.2% knockout ratio. Number 1, Jerron Boots Ennis. Number 2, Emantas Stanionis. There's Emantas. Stanionis is a Lithuanian fighter, known as a versatile boxer with a dynamic offense. 15 wins, just one loss in his last outing, 2 boots, 1 no contest, 9 knockouts. Number 3, Mario Barrios. Mexican-American boxer who has held the division's WBC title since 2024. Barrios is also the former WBA champion at 140. His next title defense is July 19th against boxing legend Manny Pacquiao, a couple weeks. Barrios you got to win that one, Barrios. Currently 29 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, 18 knockouts. We don't need Manny to be no champion. We'll never hit the end of it if Pacquiao wins that fight. We will never hit. He'll be the best thing since sliced bread. We won't be able to handle it. Barrios got to do it. But anyway, number 4, Brian Norman Jr. Yeah, you got to win that one, Barrios. Brian Norman Jr., number 4. Got to win it, Barrios. Okay. Norman Jr. is the current WBO champion at welterweight. He's known for his aggressive power punching style. 28 wins, no losses, 22 knockouts. 78.5% knockout ratio. Hovering right around 80%, 28 wins, not bad. B. Norman. Rounding out the top 5, yes, David Evanesian. Evanesian is a Russian professional boxer who has held the European welterweight title since 2019. Evanesian is 31-5, 1 draw, 19 knockouts. Some huge names on that resume. Bud at welterweight, Bud Crawford, Boots, Evanesian. Number 6, Giovanni Santillan. Number 6 currently at active welterweights. Giovanni Santillan. Santillan is an American professional boxer who has been competing in the sport since 2012, a veteran. 34 wins, just 1 loss, 18 knockouts for Santillan. Coming in at number 7 for the currently active welterweights, Shakram Giyasov, I think. Now, Giyasov is a professional boxer from Uzbekistan who fights out of Brooklyn, New York. He's known for his aggressive pressure fighting style. 17 wins, no losses, 10 knockouts. Number 8, Alexis Rocha. A Southern California fan favorite, Rocha is an experienced southpaw. 25 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, 16 knockouts. Coming in at number 9 at welterweight, active fighters, Raul Curiel, also known as the Cougar. The Mexican fighter had a decorated amateur career. Curiel is known as an aggressive pressure fighter with power. 16 wins, no losses, 1 draw, 14 knockouts, 87.5% knockout ratio. And rounding out the top 10 at welterweight is Jin Sasaki. Had a bad time in his last outing. Let's talk about it. Mike Mazik. What's happening, Mike Mazik? Salute. Mike Mazik is in the building. We're at top, rounding out the top 10 welterweights, Mike. Jin Sasaki. He had a bad time in his last outing to be Norman, remember? Sasaki is from Tokyo, Japan. After his loss to Brian Norman Jr. last month, he was taken from the ring on a stretcher, but he was alert and waved to the crowd. Sasaki has power of his own, too. 19 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, 17 knockouts, 89.4% knockout ratio. Okay, now I don't know why I put that phone on it. I gotta go right back over there and get it. I need an assistant. Anybody need a job paying minimum wage? Okay. Let me get over here and get this. Then we're gonna talk about Willie Pep versus Sandy Sadler. Okay, the Will o' the Wisp versus Sandy. I don't know what Sandy Sadler's nickname was. Okay, the Willie Pep was the Will o' the Wisp. Okay, here we go. Oh, charger out of the wall, man. I pulled the phone, the charger, the box. Damn, they pulled the socket out. Okay, here we go. First, we're gonna look at Willie, compare their styles and the significance of their rivalry on boxing history. All of that first, okay? For these two great featherweights, Willie Pep and Sandy Sadler. Okay, so let's get ready to get into that. Yeah, we're gonna look at these two great featherweights today. Okay, how's everybody? It's just still Tuesday. It's still early. This week of boxing history, got some good stuff coming up for you too. Good one today. Be right with you. Willie Pep, the Will o' the Wisp. I don't know what Sandy Sadler's nickname is, or if he had one. He had some power, I know that. I do know that much. Okay, here we go. We're just gonna compare their styles and everything before we get into their three fights. Okay. Anybody come in? Nope. Okay, let's go. Now, the debate over whether Sandy Sadler was better than Willie Pep is a classic one in boxing history, with strong arguments on both sides, although Sadler did win 3 out of the 4 fights. Kind of similar to Sugar Ray and Jake, where Sugar Ray won 5 of the 6. Kind of misleading. He wasn't that much better than Pep. Okay, so let's talk about it. Look at Sandy Sadler. Record. Now, Sadler had a professional record of 144 wins, 16 losses, 2 draws, 103 by knockout. He's a member of the 100 knockout club, okay? 144 wins, 103 by knockout. .5% knockout ratio. You got over 140 wins and over 70 knockout ratio. That's pretty good. Okay. Now, style, Sandy Sadler's style. He was known for his aggressive style, power, and ability to take punches. Sadler was a 2-time world featherweight champion and is particularly remembered for his rivalry with Willie Pep. Now, head to head, Sadler and Pep fought 4 times, with Sadler winning 3 of those fights. Their most famous fight was in 1950, where Sadler won by TKO, claiming the featherweight title. That was number 3, and that's one of the ones we're going to look at, go into deeply. The one in 1949 and 50. 51 was the last one. That was arguably the most dirtiest fight in history. They went to the mat a number of times, and one time took the referee down. They was wrestling so bad, they took the referee to the mat with them. So we're not going to really worry about that one too much. We're just going to touch on it briefly. But 2 and 3, we're going to get into those 2 deeply, okay? Sandy Sadler and Willie Pep. Now let's look at Willie Pep. We're comparing their 2 styles and everything now before we get into their matchups. Willie Pep. Now his record. Pep had a record of 229 wins, 11 losses, 1 draw. 65 by knockout. There 241 fights, he only lost 11. That's less than two. He lost less than 2% of his total fights. Incredible. And we're gonna talk. He won like 60 something straight out the gate. Then he lost one. Then I think he won like the next 70. He was like 130 something and won at one point in his career. We're gonna get into it. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay. Now Willie Pep's style. Pep was celebrated for his defensive skills, speed, and ring intelligence, ring IQ, right? He is often regarded as one of the greatest defensive boxers of all time. Yeah, talk about great defensive boxers. Willie Pep name got to be one of the first ones to come up. Now, achievements. Pep was a long-reigning featherweight champion and is known for his ability to outmaneuver opponents and win fights without taking much damage. And see, that's the thing about that Dimension Pugilistica. One of the greatest defensive, and when they say you take more damage in spawn, because Pep didn't take that much damage in fight, but guess what he died from? Dementia pugilistica. Mainly from spawn, right? Because he didn't take too much damage in his fight. So yeah, they always say you take more damage in spawn than you do in the regular fights, right? And one of the greatest defensive fighters of all died from dementia pugilistica. To show you how rough sparring is. Now, determining who is better between Pep and Sadler depends on the criteria used. Sadler's power and head-to-head success against Pep give him an edge in a specific matchup, while Pep's overall skill set and longevity in the sport highlight his greatness. Many boxing historians consider both fighters to be among the best in featherweight history, each excelling in different aspects of the sport. Ultimately, it may come down to personal preference regarding style and achievements. Yeah, kind of like a subjective argument. Now, what were the key differences in their fighting styles? We talked about this style. Now let's match up the key differences in them. What were the key differences in these two featherweight legends' fighting styles? For that, a few other divisions, but the main bulk of both of their work was done at featherweight 126. Now, Sandy Sadler and Willie Pep had contrasting fighting styles that defined their careers and contributed to their legacies in boxing. And that's what made that such a great matchup, you know. Pep was the slick boxer. Sandy Sadler was the aggressive pressure fighter. Now, Sandy Sadler, aggressive power puncher. Sadler was known for his offensive style, often pressing the action and seeking knockouts. Physicality. He utilized his physical strength, often overpowering opponents with his brawling tactics. High volume. Sadler threw a high volume of punches, focusing on landing powerful shots that could end fights quickly. Toughness. Sadler had a strong chin and could absorb punches, allowing him to engage in exchanges without backing down. Now, Willie Pep, defensive wizard, okay? Defensive wizard. Pep was renowned for his defensive skills, employing elusive movements and footwork to avoid punches, speed, and agility. Pep was exceptionally fast, using his agility to dart in and out of range, making it difficult for opponents to land clean shots on him. Counterpunching. Pep often relied on counterpunching, waiting for openings and exploiting them with precise strikes. Ring generalship, one of the best ever. Ring generalship. Pep displayed excellent ring IQ, controlling the pace of fights and using angles to outmaneuver his opponents. In conclusion, Sadler, aggressive, powerful, and tough, focusing on offense. Pep, defensive, fast, and strategic, emphasizing evasion and technique. Their styles not only shaped their own careers, but also created a fascinating dynamic during their fights. Okay, now, How did their rivalries impact their legacy? Okay, how did their rivalry impact their legacy? Okay, Willie Pep, Sandy Sadler. The 4-fight rivalry. How did it impact their legacy? Now, the rivalry between Sadler and Pep significantly impacted their legacies in several ways. Defining moments. Head-to-head fights. There are 4 fights, particularly the 1950 fight where Sadler won the title, are defining moments in both fighters' careers. Sadler's victories solidified his reputation as a powerful force in the featherweight division, while Pep's resilience and ability to come back from losses showcased his skill and determination. Style contrast. Aggression versus defense. The contrasting styles. Sadler's aggressive power fighting against Pep's defensive mastery captured the imagination of boxing fans and created a compelling narrative. This juxtaposition has contributed to discussions about fighting styles in boxing history. Historical significance. Legacy building. The rivalry helped elevate the featherweight division's profile as a whole. Both fighters are often included in discussions about the greatest featherweights, and their fights are studied for their tactical and technical elements and influence on future generations. Inspiration for fighters. The way they approach their rivalry has influenced many fighters who follow. Sadler's emphasis on power and aggression inspired future heavy hitters, while Pep's defensive techniques have been studied by many aspiring boxers. Fan engagement. Enduring rivalry. The rivalry created a lasting interest in both fighters, contributing to the mythos in boxing legacies. In boxing culture, fans often debate their legacies, keeping their names alive in discussions about the sport of boxing. Overall, the Sadler-Pep rivalry not only defined their careers, but also enriched the legacy of boxing itself. It highlighted the drama of competition and the complexity of skill, making both fighters iconic figures in the sport of boxing's history. Sandy Sadler, Willie Pep. Okay. And finally, which of these two fighters had a more significant impact on boxing history? Okay. Which of them had a more significant impact on the sport's history between Willie Pep and Sandy Sadler? Okay. Okay, which fighter had a more significant impact on boxing history? Then we're going to go to their fights, to their matchups. We're going to look at mainly 2 and 3. Okay. Now, the debate over whether Sandy Sadler was better than Willie Pep is a classic one in boxing history, with strong arguments on both sides. Wait a minute. Which fighter had a more significant impact on boxing history? That's what we're trying to answer right now. Here we go. Now, determining which fighter had a more significant impact on boxing history between Sandy Sadler and Willie Pep involves considering several factors. Willie Pep, defensive mastery. Pep is often regarded as one of the greatest defensive boxers of all time. His style influenced future generations of fighters, emphasizing the importance of defense in boxing, longevity, and consistency. Pep's career spanned over 26 years, during which he maintained a high level of performance. His ability to adapt and remain competitive over time is notable. Cultural impact. Pep's skills and charisma helped popularize boxing during the golden age of the sport, contributing to its growth in popularity. Sandy Sadler, his power and aggression. Sadler's aggressive fighting style and knockout power made him a fan favorite and set a standard for future fighters who relied on strength and aggression. The head-to-head rivalry. His rivalry with Pep, including their memorable fights, brought significant attention to the featherweight division and showcased the high stakes of championship boxing. Championship legacy. Sadler's two-time reign as featherweight champion and his ability to defeat a highly regarded opponent like Willie Pep solidified his place in boxing history. In the conclusion, while both fighters made significant contributions, Willie Pep's influence on boxing techniques and his long-lasting legacy may give him a slight edge in terms of historical impact. His defensive style and the way he helped modern boxing techniques had left a lasting mark on the sport. But Sadler's powerful style and memorable rivalries also play a crucial role in the narrative of boxing history. Ultimately, both fighters are integral to the sport of boxing's legacy. Sandy Sadler, Willie Pep. Okay, now let's look at their matchups. Okay? Their matchups. Sandy Sadler and the Will of the West. Okay? I wish I knew what Sandy Sadler's nickname was, but I don't. So I ain't gonna worry about it. Okay? Willie Pep versus Sandy Sadler. Let's get into it. Okay, how's everybody this Tuesday afternoon? There we go. It's right there. Okay, we're going to get into this historic rivalry. We're going to be covering some rivalries in the near future coming up, starting with Willie Pep and Sandy Sadler today. Okay, February 11th, 1949. Pep versus Sadler 2. Mainly going to be 2 and 3, but we are going to touch on 1 in here and 4. February 11th, 1949. Willie Pep versus Sandy Sadler 2. Second fight. Okay. Now there's a certain mystique to legendary fights of yesteryear, a nostalgia that speaks of a time when the sweet science was larger than life and ruled supreme. There are but a few wise old heads left lucky enough to have witnessed some of the greatest fights in boxing history, but with no film to view many of them, the rest of us are left to ponder just how great they really were. The second meeting between Hartford's Willie Pep and Harlem's Sandy Sadler, a fight awarded Ring Magazine's Fight of the Year award for 1949, is a perfect example of such a fight. For most of us, all that is left are the stories of the fight's immensity. Stories told through newspapermen who were on hand to witness it. The words weaving a tale of the skill, bravery, and guile on display. Okay? Okay. All right. I was looking at the chat. The Boxing Mania Podcast Plus in the building. What's up, bro? How are you today? The Boxing Mania Podcast Plus. Fire channel. He does some fire post-fight content. Let's salute the Boxing Mania Podcast Plus. And everybody in here already subscribed to him. But if you're not, take care of that. Boxing Menu Podcast Plus. Salute. We talking about Willie Pep versus Sandy Sadler today. Salute. Okay, let's continue. Okay. Now, when Pep lost his title to Sadler on October 29th, 1948, that was the first fight. Many believed the career of one of the greatest featherweights of all time had come to an abrupt end. Pep had been knocked out in the fourth round, and the general consensus, as noted in a report in the Milwaukee Journal, was that he was finished. The Milwaukee Journal wrote, Willie Pep is all washed up after losing his featherweight boxing championship to Sandy Sadler. That seems to be the consensus following Friday night's stunning knockout victory for Sadler, a lean Harlem puncher, in 2:38 of the fourth round. Now, while Pep may well have been the best featherweight the world has ever seen, the knockout loss to Sadler, the total of some 136 fights, and the plane crash that nearly took his life in 1947 proved enough for many to label him a shot fighter. But, as the old adage goes, beware the wounded warrior. Okay? Beware the wounded warrior. Pep came to preeminence in 1942 when he outpointed fellow Hall of Fame inductee Albert Chalky Wright at Madison Square Garden in New York. That made him 62-0 before his first professional loss, a non-title decision to lightweight champion Sammy Angut. The loss meant little in the featherweight division, however, as Pep still ruled supreme, and he would go unbeaten in 72 straight fights before running into the heavy hands of Sadler. So yeah, he had won his first 62. He had won his first 60 fights before he lost his first fight, right? 62-0. Then he won his next 72. That made him 134-1. And that's what he was going into this fight against Sadler. He won 62, lost 1, then he won his next 72. Okay, so that's where he was at going into this fight against Sandy Sadler. 134 wins, just 1 loss. A 62-72 fight winning streaks. Okay? Wow. And superlatives can't do justice to Pep's reign over the 126-pound division. But the shocking and violent manner in which Sadler had taken his title resulted in few boxing fans believing Pep had what it took to take the title back. After all, Sadler's run to the top was one that came by way of brute force. The lanky Harlem native owned one of the sport's biggest punches, and he had dispatched many a featherweight and lightweight with his vicious punches before finally getting his chance at the title. Okay? Pep versus Sadler 2, because he took the title and won. Now, Pep versus Sadler 2 was set for February 11th, 1949, but it took place only because of a clause in the contract between Pep and the 20th Century Sporting Club. Promoter Harry Markson held little hope that the rematch would be a success, and a New York Times report referred to his surprise when the fight proved to be a hot ticket. And the promoters didn't think the fight was going to sell that well, but they were pleasantly surprised when it did. The promoter Markson was agreeably surprised when the box office windows were first opened and a flood of orders for tickets came pouring in. He was even more surprised when these orders continued, and yesterday the fight impresario was downright bewildered as the late rush of applicants augured a certain capacity house. This was what they wrote in the newspaper about it. Now, what seemed a white elephant at the start was transformed into a golden calf when the promise to be worth more than $80,000 at the gate. Okay, that was a newspaper article about the ticket sales for the fight. Now, whether it was hope, respect, or a genuine belief that Willie Pep could in fact win his title back, it seemed as if the people had spoken. This was to be a fight of major importance. Some 20,000 crammed in the Madison Square Garden just 3 months after the young lion from Harlem had devoured his older adversary, and the crowd was on hand to see whether the once great Pep was up to the task of gaining his title back from such a ferocious opponent. That was the storyline. Many people thought that when Sadler took the title and won, that he had ended Pep's career. So the fight sold out because the people wanted to see it, because Sadler was just destroying everybody on the way to beating Pep, right? And many people was on hand to see if Pep had what it takes to get his title back, or if that was really the end of it. Okay? So the bell rang, and to the astonishment of the crowd, Pep went on the attack. Okay? He tattooed the face of Sadler with his quick left hand, landing some 37 jabs in the first round, right? The hand speed of the former champion was back, something many observers thought Pep had lost after watching his lackluster performance in the first fight. The New York Times called Pep's start to the fight a demonstration of blinding speed that had Sandy Sadler looking like a novice. Okay? Yeah, so Pep came out there on fire. Now Sadler marched forward relentlessly in spite of Pep's jabs, but the Hartford slickster kept his heavy-hitting rival off him by way of his counterpunching prowess, as described by the Chicago Tribune. This is what the Chicago Tribune wrote. Sadler was moving forward, measuring Willie with unblinking eyes, but Pep was too much for him with his counterpunching. But counterpunching wasn't Pep's only strategy for keeping Sadler at bay. Pep utilized some questionable tactics throughout the fight and was warned by the referee for wrestling in the first round and healing Sadler in the face in the third round. That wasn't nothing compared to that final fight, though. But Pep couldn't hold back forever the waves of destruction that were continually advancing. And in the fourth round, Sadler began to dent the defenses of the challenger. Sadler landed savage rips to the body and grazed Pep's face numerous times, always just a few inches away from landing a blow that undoubtedly would have ended the fight. Such was the dynamic power of Sadler's fists. Okay? Sadler landed a hard left in the fifth round, opening a cut on Pep's right cheek. But the gash, which bled throughout the rest of the fight, did little to stop Pep from dominating his opponent. He landed all manner of punches over the next 6 rounds, attacking from every conceivable angle and displaying his supreme footwork while avoiding the aggressive attempts from his adversary to land a knockout blow. Why this thing is taking so long to change. There we go. Okay. Sadler started to gain momentum in the late rounds, opening a new cut over Pep's right eye in the 13th and slamming home numerous teeth-rattling shots in the round that followed, the 14th round. But Pep weathered the storm and came out with his guns blazing for the 15th and final round. As the New York Times reported, Pep gave his greatest thrill in the 15th round, when after weathering the jarring fire of the 14th, he came back to fight Sadler all over the ring with a strength that few, if any, thought he still possessed. The crowd erupted when the scores were announced and Pep's hand was raised. Wild turmoil broke out in the garden, reported the Chicago Tribune, which was loaded with rabid Pep fans, as announcer Johnny Addo gave a unanimous decision. Yep, Willie Pep pulled it off. Yes, he did. Willie Pep had won back the featherweight championship of the world, becoming the first man to regain the title at 126 pounds since George Dixon back in 1898. But even more significantly, he had done it in spectacular fashion. While the second Pep vs. Sadler battle had been competitive and exciting, all three judges scored for the famed will-o'-the-wisp by margins of 5, 6, and 7 points. The victory and the way in which Pep bucked the odds and schooled such a capable and dangerous fighter only solidified his place as one of the best boxers, pound for pound, of all time. Perhaps the words of famed boxing scribe James P. Dawson best illustrated the enormity of what Pep had achieved when he wrote, "Pep put up the greatest battle of his career. He called on every ounce of strength within his compact little body and all the gall he has accumulated through 11 years as an amateur and professional fighter to gain the triumph. How well he succeeded is reflected in the tabulation of the officials. And in riding to victory, he proved to be one of the greatest featherweight champions the ring has known." Okay, that was number 2. Okay, now we're going to look at the rematch. Well, the trilogy. Well, they had 4. So we're going to go to the third fight now. Okay? Yeah. They actually had 4 fights. Okay? We're going to go to number 3, which was the following year. Okay? This was in February 11th, 1949. The third fight was 1950. Okay? Give me 1 minute. Equipment moving slow. Come on. Come on. Okay, yeah, we're going to get it together in a moment. Okay. Oh, my God, it went all the way out on me. But here we go. Not a problem. But how's everybody? Hope everybody's enjoying the show. We talking about Willie Pep and Sandy Sadler today. This is the idea I got from Al Booker to talk about some old fights. It might be along. He didn't know I was going to do this today. But yeah, we're going to be talking about some series in the weeks coming up, you know. This is just starting it off. And we got some good series that we had throughout the history of boxing. We're going to get to Maddie and Marquez and Barrera and Morales, Ward, Gaddy, Holyfield, Bo, all of them. It's just starting the ball rolling right here. That's all. There we go. We're going to fight 3 now. Okay. September 8th, 1950. Willie Pep versus Sandy Sadler 3. Intense rivalry sparks foul-filled battle. And that wasn't nothing compared to the 4th fight, but we're going to go on. We're going to touch on the 4th one, but right now the 3rd. Okay. Pep Sadler 3. All right, there we go. September 8th, 1950. Willie Pep versus Sandy Sadler 3. Hope everybody's enjoying the show today. Okay. Now, I'm a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, Pep versus Sadler. For diehard fans of fisticuffs, those 4 syllables conjure up all kinds of recollections and images and importing facts from the rich history of pugilism. The storied feud is unlike any other in boxing history, and it was their 3rd clash that established that fact, for good or ill. They were featherweights, and yet they inspired truly heavyweight interest from American sports fans. And while both, even in their day, were regarded as 2 of the greatest ever to step into a boxing ring, mutual respect was conspicuously absent from their competitive rivalry. The simple truth was Pep and Sadler hated each other with a passion, okay? But they did become best of friends after their careers. But they hated, during these 4 fights, they hated each other with a passion. Couldn't stand each other, okay? Now, the first battle in October 1948 was a shock for sports fans, as it saw Pep, a renowned defensive genius, battered into submission and then knocked out in just 4 rounds. Now, the fight had been so one-sided that many wondered if the defeat marked the end of the road for the 26-year-old Pep, a truly brilliant boxer who had racked up over 130 wins at that time, against only 1 loss and 1 draw prior to his humiliating defeat. But there was also the fact that Pep had suffered serious injuries, including a broken back in a plane crash in January of 1947. And while he recorded an astonishing 26 straight wins in little more than 15 months, when he returned to action, some observers felt the cagey operator from Connecticut had lost a step since that near brush with death. The defeat to Sadler appeared to confirm this view. After a plane crash, significant injuries, 26 fights in 15 months, a year and 3 months, 26 fights. Wow. That's a lot without even being in a plane crash, right? But the following February, Pep returned and gave fans a truly gallant performance, regaining the title from Sadler by unanimous decision in 15 dramatic rounds. That was the fight we just talked about. The victory is generally regarded as one of the greatest in the long history of the sport. And like the first Pep versus Sadler confrontation, the fight drew a huge crowd, selling out Madison Square Garden. And so, interest from sports fans remained keen for the rubber match. This showdown setting an attendance record for the featherweight division with almost 40,000 in the stands at Yankee Stadium. Had this one outside Yankee Stadium, okay? 40,000. Because they knew this one was going to be a barn burner, because Sadler had won the first one, Pep had won 2, so they had to bring this one outside the Yankee Stadium. 40,000 people was in the house for this one. Despite Pep's great triumph the year before and 3 subsequent title defenses, the oddsmakers tabbed the champion as an 8-5 underdog, reinforcing one of the major themes of the Pep vs. Sadler rivalry. There being the general impression that Sadler was just too big, strong, and powerful for Pep. And in fact, in the late going in the second fight, Pep had struggled with Sadler's aggression and physical advantages. Even when the fight he had won, he had kind of struggled with Sadler's size toward the late rounds of the second fight, the one he just won. Thus, the Sharpies saw chapter 3 of the series as the bigger and younger man's fight to lose, as Sadler's fight to lose, okay? That's what the oddsmakers thought going in. So few were shocked when, despite Pep once again being a better boxer and using angles and sublime footwork to outfox the aggressor, Sadler scored a knockdown in round 3. Soon after, Pep, no doubt frustrated with the challenger's roughhouse tactics and his undeniable physical advantage, began to incorporate some less than honorable tactics into his performance. In addition to a pesky jab and quick combinations, Pep now incorporated some well-placed thumbs along with plenty of pushing and shoving, not to mention a few stomps on Sadler's toes. Okay? It started to turn dirty. All right? Well, Sadler didn't need to be asked twice. He responded in kind, and soon there was almost as much fouling going on as there was boxing. Pep controlled the fight for the most part with his usual brilliant footwork and quick hands, while Sadler concentrated on a ruthless body attack. And at the same time, both fighters demonstrated themselves to be certified experts at the darker arts of ringcraft, freely indulging in plenty of lacing, gouging, tripping, thumbing, and elbowing. When the bell rang for round 7, it was obvious that Pep had the edge in terms of points, thanks to his superb boxing and plenty of clean right hands to the challenger's jaw. In fact, some at ringside had scored only the 3rd round for Sadler. The champion just too quick and slippery, but at the same time, Sadler's vicious body punches, many of them straying under the belt line, were taking their toll on Pep. And indeed, a tiring Pep found himself in some difficulty in round 7, as Sadler was able to close the gap and land more heavy left to both body and head, forcing Pep back and manhandling him. Okay? Sadler's size and strength was starting to take over now, as the odds makers thought it would. At round's end, round 7, the fighters were locked in a vicious clinch on the ropes, and when the bell rang and Pep retreated to his corner, all could see he was in agony. The ringside physician examined the stricken fighter and diagnosed a dislocated left shoulder. When round 8 began, Pep stayed on his stool. Sadler had regained the world title, though in a manner satisfying for no one. Talk of a 4th Pep vs. Sadler clash was widespread even before the stands in Yankee Stadium had completely emptied from the 3rd fight. The very next day, Harry Markson, president of the International Boxing Club, declared that arrangements for Pep vs. Sadler Part 4 were already in the works. This was just the next day, okay? Already talk about the 4th fight. It was news a bit of Pep welcomed. Pep said, "He got me in a double arm lock. He twisted my arm twice. That's what did it, not his punches. Sure, he hurt me a few times, but I could have beaten him." Yeah, Pep said he pulled his arm when he dislocated his shoulders. Pep said Sadler yanked it out. That's what did it. Pep was ahead on the cards. You know, when he didn't come out for the 8th round, he was winning on the cards, okay? Yes, he was. Okay, now, for his part, Cherry Sadler was unperturbed about the controversial conclusion. Sadler said, "I thought a punch to the kidney did it. But if they say I twisted his arm, okay, I twisted his arm." After all, said Sadler, Pep did his share of rough stuff too. "He thumped me in the eye," said Sadler. "He did the same thing in the other fights. I told the referee, but that Pep never stopped thumbing me." Okay, so a year later, they battled again in a fight that was incredibly even more foul-filled and chaotic than the 3rd one. And once again, Pep surrendered on his stool, this time after round 9, due to a badly cut right eye. The conduct of the fighters, who spent much of the fight wrestling and rolling around on the canvas. I told you one time they took the referee to the canvas with them. But anyway, the conduct of the two fighters was deemed so disgraceful that the New York State Athletic Commission suspended their professional boxing licenses of both men. And it seemed the public, too, had tired of the sordid nature of the rivalry. Unlike the huge crowds that had gathered for the first 3 fights, some 14,000 rattled around in the cavernous polo grounds for the final Pep-Sadler clash. Yeah, the crowd didn't show up for the 4th one. It was an undignified end, but given their mutual hatred and the shoddy tactics on display, somehow fitting. And they did become best friends after their careers, and they traveled around doing exhibitions together. You know, after 4 tough fights like that, I guess you can't help but get get a certain respect for each other. You know what I mean? Yeah. So they traveled around after their careers, doing exhibitions together, giving speeches. Yeah, I saw him a couple times giving speeches. Yes, Sadler had Willie Pep actually died from dementia pugilistica. And Sadler had it so bad, they were doing a thing together, and Pep had to talk for him. People in the audience was asking questions about their rivalry, and when they would ask Sadler something, Willie Pep would have to answer. Sadler was suffering from dementia pugilistica so bad, he couldn't make himself understood. Yeah, it was really bad, sad, but okay. So let's talk about some other great featherweights now, since we're in the featherweight division. Okay. I gotta get my other equipment back. Anyway. Oh, goodness. Keep your ass tablet. Oh, excuse me. I'll talk to my equipment like they're human beings. Okay. We're gonna talk about some other great featherweights. First, the great Salvador Sanchez. I always touch on him, but I never really dug down deep into him on the show. So today we're gonna do it. The great Salvador Sanchez. Yeah, I showed these, didn't I? Mm-hmm. Yep, the great Salvador Sanchez. Here he is, right there. Okay. That's great. Ended his career at 23 after a fatal car accident, and still in the Hall of Fame. Still thought of as one of the greatest Mexican fighters ever, and still thought of one of the greatest featherweights ever, Salvador Sanchez. It's just he's one of those what ifs. If he would have went up, he didn't go anywhere near his prime. So he would have went up into his prime, into his 30s. Wow, just incredible. Thinking about that. Okay, so how good was Salvador Sanchez anyway? Let's talk about it. Hit the like and subscribe, please. Anybody out there listening that haven't? Okay. Now, Salvador Sanchez. He was already a Hall of Fame boxer, a generational great, elite of the elite, when he died at age 23, right? And I believe Salvador Sanchez is the only member of the Hall of Fame whose career ended at age 23. That is just how good he really was, okay? Now, like almost all great fighters, Sanchez came from poverty. He was one of 11 children born into a poor family in the small Mexican city of Santiago on January 26, 1959. He grew up dreaming of being a doctor or helping others, but his family was dirt poor, literally struggling to get food to eat. There was no time or money for even regular school. Salvador would say, "Boxing is easy when you grow up fighting to eat." Now, despite his increasingly wealth and fame after his boxing career, when he got into his boxing career, Sanchez remained humble till the day he died, and he never forgot where he came from. The great commentator Albert Cosell said about Salvador Sanchez, "Those who know him knew that he was untouched by his status as a national hero and a world champion. The great thing about the kid was that he never forgot what he might have been had it not been for his success as a boxer." Now, Sanchez had only a few amateur fights before turning pro at age 16. And he learned the game in the ring, like on-the-job training. Salvador Sanchez was a complete package, a fighter who possessed speed, power, defensive skills, a great ring IQ, and excellent counterpunching skills. He could do it all: stand outside and box, go inside and go to war, counterpunch, pound with right leads. There was nothing Salvador Sanchez could not do. And he taught it all to himself. Again, entering the pro ranks at just age 16 and suffering his only loss at age 18 as he learned the tricks of the trade. He had considerably more talent than Canelo Alvarez, who also learned starting at age 16. Okay? Salvador Sanchez has just entered the star phase of his career when he was killed in a car accident at the age of 23 in 1982. WBC featherweight champion, he had cleaned out the division, defeating the tough punching machine Danny Little Red Lopez twice, Ruben Castillo, Juan Laporte, the great Wilfredo Gomez, and pounded all-time great Azuma Nelson. Right? Fighters who opposed him spoke of Salvador Sanchez with awe. Okay? Danny Little Red Lopez, one of his opponents, said of Salvador Sanchez after losing to him, "Maybe someone can beat Sanchez, but I can't. And nobody I have ever been in the ring with can beat him either." Salvador lost 6 fights in his career. Danny Little Red Lopez. Little Red Lopez lost 6 fights in his career, 2 of them to Salvador Sanchez. And he also had this to say about Salvador Sanchez's style. Salvador was a smart fighter. He could move. His jab was always in my face. He could punch. He was able to do things others wasn't able to do. He set traps. He could go back and forward. He was so sharp, and he'd be out of the way before I could land on him. He was always moving. I never could hit the guy. If I could have landed a shot on him, I might have knocked him out. Salvador had excellent boxing skills. He was a special fighter. Against Hall of Famer Azuma Nelson, Sanchez showed he could and would fight on the inside if he had to. He stood toe-to-toe with Azuma Nelson and beat him. And Azuma Nelson would later praise Salvador Sanchez's boxing skills, saying his movement was amazing. Okay? Now, Salvador Sanchez faced an amazing 3 Hall of Famers, beating them all, despite the brevity of his life. He faced Wilfredo Gomez, Hall of Famer, super bantamweight. Azuma Nelson, Hall of Fame, super featherweight. Roberto Castanon, featherweight. Danny Little Red Lopez, Hall of Famer, super featherweight. Ruben Castillo, featherweight. Salvador Sanchez completely dominated the 2 top 10 fighters in the prime of their careers, Wilfredo Gomez and Danny Little Red Lopez. What might have been if Sanchez had not been killed in that car crash? What might have been? That's one of the biggest ones of all time. In the early morning of August 12, 1982, while driving his Porsche 928 sports car along the Federal Highway from Querétaro to San Luis Potosi in Mexico, Salvador Sanchez had a terrible car accident, totaling his beloved sports car and dying instantly. And boxing fans were forever left with the haunting question of what might have been. Okay? 3 weeks after the car crash that took his life, Sanchez was due to meet number 1 contender Juan Laporte in a rematch for the title. It is hard to see the solid Laporte beating him, right? The great Salvador, it was hard to see Laporte beating Sanchez. And after that Laporte fight, Sanchez was planning on moving up to super featherweight and challenging Bazooka Limon. 44 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw at the time of his death. Sanchez's only defeat had come when weight drained from making bantamweight. he lost by split decision to Antonio Becerra when he was just 18 years old and still learning the fight game. Okay? Sanchez never lost again, right? And generations of fight fans have grown up wondering, what if he had lived? I'm one of them. What if he had lived and moved up to face such luminaries as Julio Cesar Chavez, who was 3 years younger than Sanchez, but would have been rising when Sanchez was active in his division had he lived? Because he probably would have went as far as 140, because he was at 126 at the age of 23. So him and Julio Cesar Chavez would have met. It would have been something. The Salvador Sanchez. Who knows? This is a boxing historian, Matt McGrail said. Who knows what we in boxing lost when we lost Salvador Sanchez? He consistently showed the understanding and awareness of a veteran in his early 20s, a testimony perhaps to the number of fights and defenses he crammed into his short career. As a veteran, he might have attained the rare heights of strategic genius reserved for the likes of Archie Moore and Bernard Hopkins. The Associated Press named Sanchez the third greatest featherweight of the 20th century in 1999, and he only went to age 23, and the Associated Press thought of him as the third greatest. Just think if he would have went through an entire career, he would be number one, no questions asked. The historian Monty Cox sums up Sanchez's place in boxing history and how good he was. Sanchez easily rates among the top 10 featherweights of all time and is arguably among the top 3, and only fought till he was 23 years old. Okay? So now let's take a look at Danny, another great featherweight. Danny Little Red Lopez. Okay? That's him and Salvador Sanchez right there. Let's take a look at Danny Little Red Lopez, since we are in the featherweight division today. Danny Little Red Lopez right now. Here we go. Danny Little Red Lopez. Is Danny Little Red Lopez recognized as a top 100 talent? Okay, let's see. Let's talk about that. Danny Little Red Lopez. All right. Hope everybody's enjoying the show today. Okay. Let's talk about Danny Little Red. Danny Little Red Lopez is recognized as a great fighter. Only great fighters sit in the Hall of Fame. Now, Danny Lopez was born on July 6, 1952, on the Uinta and Ouray Reservation in Fort Duquesne, Utah. His nickname was Little Red. He is another boxer who came from the depths of poverty and fought his way up and out of it. Danny Lopez is of Ute Indian, Mexican, and Irish heritage. His childhood was bitterly hard until he finally found a permanent home in his teens. Now, though born on the reservation, during his childhood, he was moved off the reservation and into foster care. He was only 8 years old when it was taken from his family. And it did not go well. And Lopez moved from one foster home to another until he finally found a home in Southern California. Lopez said of his upbringing, "My father left my mother with 8 kids, and the state took the 3 younger ones. I was one of them. They placed us in foster care. I lived with different aunts and uncles in Utah on the reservation. My brother Leonard boxed in the Marines, and my brother Ernie boxed at Stan's Boxing Club. It was because of them that I wanted to be a boxer. I took it up when I was 16 years old." Okay, then an amateur career for Little Red. Amateur career. Lopez followed his brothers into boxing and was an excellent amateur fighter with about 50 fights, winning regional Golden Gloves titles. Okay, pro career for Little Red. Lopez turned pro in 1971 and became WBC featherweight champion of the world, and an immensely popular fighter both on TV and in Southern California during the 1970s. Asked by Ring Magazine about his proudest moment as a boxer, Lopez remembered winning the title in Africa from champion David Cote. Probably winning the WBC featherweight title over in Ghana, Africa from David Cote. That was my proudest moment as a boxer. Lopez finished his career 42 wins, 6 losses. He was known for his tremendous punching power, with 39 of his 42 fights coming by knockout, which is a 93% knockout ratio. Outstanding. And incredible. Okay, now he had 39 stoppages, right? And incredible 24 of his stoppages came by 10 count on the deck, being counted out knockouts, not TKOs. 24 of them was out for the count, 10 count knockout. That's a lot, 24, wow. That means 61.5% of his stoppages were by on the floor, count out knockouts, okay? That's over half of his fights ended with his opponents being on the canvas, being counted out, not TKOs. Ring Magazine rated Lopez at number 26 on their list of 100 greatest punchers. And this man was a featherweight, okay, number 26. Lopez amazingly won his first 21 fights by knockout. So he had some power. First 21, 93% knockout ratio, 24 by 10 count on the floor knockouts. 21, first 21 fights of his career were knockout. Okay? Little Red. As featherweight champion, Lopez defended his title 8 times. He was a WBC champion for 4 years, from 1976 to 1980. Now, he began his pro career in 1971, and only a year later entered the top 10 at number 7. He moved up to number 4 in 1973. He dropped out in 1974 after a brutal loss to Bobby Chacon. He was back at number 4 in 1975, and from 1976 to 1980, he was champion, okay? And until his loss to Sanchez, he was rated the best in the world, okay? Now, he fought the best of his era, okay? He fought Salvador Sanchez twice, Bobby Chacon, Mike Ayala, Roberto Castanon, Juan Domingo Malvarez, David Cote, Art, that's where he got the title from, Cote over there in South Africa. Art Hafey, Sean O'Grady, Chico Castillo, Ruben Olivares. That's a who's who of featherweight, 126, 130 in the 70s. That's a who's who, right? Of the 9 years that he boxed, he was ranked in the top 10 7 years out of that 9, including 4 years at the top, and 6 years in the top 10, 6 years in a row at the top 10. His reign as featherweight champion ended in 1980 when he lost to the great Salvador Sanchez. Lopez retired after a second loss to Sanchez, and except for one ill-advised fight 12 years later, he stayed retired. Yeah, and then throughout his career, Lopez was fueled by fury, by a life that left him born on a reservation, moved off of it when he was a child, sent from foster home to foster home, and as he once said, leaving him with nowhere to really belong. In 1987, Lopez was selected and entered the World Boxing Hall of Fame, and in 2010, he was selected for and entered the International Boxing Hall of Fame. After boxing, Lopez was a part of the autograph signing circuit after retiring. He returned to live in Utah full-time near the reservation where he was born. Ultimately, Lopez moved to Los Angeles where he worked for a time as a construction worker. Today, he lives in quiet retirement in Chino Hills, California, plays golf, and enjoys time with his family, wife, children, and grandchildren. There you have it, Danny Little Red Lopez. Okay, so now I'm always talking about that Joe Louis and Billy Conn situation where Billy Conn had Joe Louis beat, then he decided he wanted to brawl and got knocked out. So we're going to look at that deeply into that fight right now. Joe Louis and Billy Conn, okay? We're going to take a look at that one. We're going to look at it like we looked at the Willie Pep and Sandy Sanders situation. Let's take a look at Joe Louis and Billy Conn. Okay? The Brown Bomber and Billy Conn now. We're going to get into it. Okay? Yeah, Joe Louis versus Billy Conn. Yeah, Billy Conn had him beat, remember, and then for 12 rounds was giving Joe Louis a boxing lesson. Then he wanted to change his strategy and stand toe-to-toe and got knocked out. We've never really looked at that fight. We've just talked about it. But today, let's dig into that. Joe Louis versus Billy Conn. Okay? I was talking about what's coming up this weekend yesterday, but I forgot already. Is Barrios and Pacquiao, I believe that is this weekend. Yeah. Yeah, Barrios got to win that one, man, because if Manny wins, we will never hear the end of it. They'll be calling him better than Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, Joe Louis. Manny could beat Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, Muhammad Ali on the same night. If he wins this fight Saturday, oh my God, man, we are never going to hear the end of it. OMG. Barrios has got to win this fight. It might be fixed. What a better storyline than Manny winning this fight than him and Floyd fighting for a real major title. That would break the bank. So I don't know. You can't trust boxing. They might have this thing arranged, man. I hope not. We do not need Manny Pacquiao. Manny Pacquiao should have stayed in the Hall of Fame where he was at. You know, where he was at. We was fine. How can you be in the Hall of Fame and then come out and fight? Where they do that at? Because did they take him out of the Hall of Fame? Huh? You got to wait, 3 or 5 years now to get in the Hall of Fame. So he waited his allotted time, went in the Hall of Fame. Now he's fighting again. So, wow. Man, that's kind of crazy. June 18th, 1941, Louis versus Conn won. Okay, they actually fought twice, but the first one was the one where we had that situation where Conn was leading. Joe Louis needed a knockout, and he got it. Yeah. Ain't that crazy about, man? What y'all think about that, man? You can go in the Hall of Fame and come out and fight, so I don't. It's giving me a headache even thinking about it. I hope he doesn't win. I'm telling y'all, if he wins, he's gonna be like, he's the best thing since they invented the automobile. Man. Wow. Yeah, this fight took place on June 18th, 1941. Okay. Then the second fight he knocked him out in the 8th round, but we're talking about this one today. June 18th, 1941. Joe Louis versus Billy Conn won. Let's talk about it. Okay. It is 1941. And while some say death and taxes are the only sure things in life, American sports fans know different. There exists a third certainty. Joe Louis will win his next fight, and then the one after that, and the one after that. But he almost didn't. Billy Conn almost changed history. It almost personally counts in horseshoes. Stony-faced Joe became heavyweight champion of the world when he made James the Cinderella Man Braddock's clock strike 12 in 1937. And Lewis had since proven so dominant, he now had no competition to speak of. He had defended his title 17 times. 15 of those wins came inside the distance and possessed an air of invincibility. Such was his skill and power, right? His deadly accurate punches had laid waste to the division, and he was forced to embark on a tour of frequent fights against French contenders and club fighters just to keep the business of being heavyweight champion lucrative. It came to be known as the Bomb of the Month Club, and its existence only bolstered Lewis's stature as the titan of the heavyweights, not to mention one of the greatest champions in boxing history. In both 1938 and 39, he was proclaimed Fighter of the Year by the Ring magazine. Okay? Both years, Joe was the Fighter of the Year, 38 and 39. Right? Okay? In 1940, however, he was not. Instead, that distinction went to the light heavyweight champion of the world, one Billy Conn of Pittsburgh. He received it after his first full year of campaigning as a heavyweight and scoring big wins over Bob Pastor, Al McCoy, and Lee Savold. This did little to make Conn a serious threat to Lewis, but it did solidify the general perception that of all the no-hopers out there, the Irish-American Conn had the most hope. Regarded as pound for pound one of the sharpest and smartest boxers in the game, Conn was exceptionally quick and downright brilliant defensively. Having been well schooled by trainer Jack Blackburn, Lewis employed some excellent technique of his own, but of course it was his crushing power that allowed him to dominate as he did. Thus, Lewis versus Conn was the classic matchup of the power puncher versus the clever slickster, bull versus the matador, and the high profile of both men made it irresistible. Even if few gave Conn more than a very slim chance. You know, they gave Conn a slim to none chance to winning. Yeah, because 38, 39, Lewis won Fighter of the Year. 1940, they gave it to Billy Conn. That's what made this so intriguing of a fight. But like I said, few gave Billy Conn a chance of winning, though. Even Billy Conn didn't. It looked like he threw the fight. In the end, okay. Almost 60,000 gathered that June night, the largest crowd in the Polo Grounds since the famous Dempsey-Firpo fight brawl in 1923. And the atmosphere was positively electric. Such was the curiosity and anticipation. Many sensed that maybe, just maybe, Lewis finally had a real challenge on his hands. If not, it was still an alluring and high caliber matchup. A clash of two dominant and popular champions. The last two fighters of the year for the last 3 years, right? And Ring Magazine was the big one. Only one back then. We didn't have no Sports Illustrated Fighter of the Year or Box Rec. None of that kind of fight. Only the Ring Magazine back then, okay? Still the big one. But the early going looked bad for the challenger. Enjoying a 25-pound weight advantage, Lewis set the pace, stalking his man and landing shots to Conn's belly before staggering him with a pair of rights in round 2. But round 3 was a different story, and by its end, everyone knew, especially Lewis, that no one was going home early. Conn's jab started to find its target, and the challenger wasted no time in bringing behind it some sharp hooks and right hands. Constantly shifting and moving as he worked, Billy landed a hard right near the end of the third and immediately followed up with a sharp 1-2 that forced Lewis to do something no one had seen him do since Max Schmeling knocked him silly back in 1936. Hang on, he made Joe Louis hang on so it could clear his head. Nobody had seen this since 1936 when Max Schmeling had stopped him. Remember? So everybody like, uh-oh, we might have something here. So, in round 4, the astonished crowd took in another extremely rare sight. Joe Louis's knees were actually buckling after Billy struck with 2 sharp right hands. The challenger quickly followed up, clubbing Louis with both fists and forcing him to retreat. After 4 rounds, boxing fans knew their hopes had been fulfilled. The great Joe Louis was in a seriously competitive battle that was going to test him more than any of his previous title defenses. But in the very next round, the momentum shifted dramatically, as it must in great fights, and it would do in this one over and over again. Joe got home a heavy left to the body, and seconds later, a vicious hook to the jaw, which staggered Khan, and the challenger had difficulty finding his corner at the end of the round. Revived with smelling salts, Khan got back up on his toes in the 6th and had a better round until Louis caught him on the ropes and again pounded the ribs of Billy the Kid. The 2 champions exchanging heavy shots until the bell to end the round. So this is a fight here. Joe Louis is in a fight for his title against a light heavyweight, okay? Khan was a light heavyweight. Excuse me. The 7th round saw the challenger constantly moving, staying 1 step ahead of the champion, and that set up the 8th and 9th, which were all Khan. The end of the 8th left everyone bewildered as the Pittsburgh Kid swarmed Louis, striking repeatedly, rattling Joe with lefts and rights, and appearing to have incredibly taken full control of the fight. Khan could be seen laughing as he moved in on Louis at the start of the 9th round, battering the champion in a manner no one had anticipated. At round's end, Khan told Louis, "Joe, you're in a fight tonight." And the champion replied, "I know it," before turning to the safety of his corner. But Louis rose to the challenge. He continued with his body attack, showing great resolve, not to mention firm belief in Sam Langford's old axiom: kill the body and the head will die, and put tremendous pressure on his courageous, though significantly smaller adversary. Again and again, the crowd was brought to its feet as the 2 champions engaged in one prolonged exchange after another. One prolonged exchange after another. Okay? Oh, goodness. Here we go. Khan came back in the 11th round, using his excellent footwork to avoid Louis's strongest punches and find angles for his own. And then came the 12th, perhaps the most unforgettable of the fight. To everyone's unbelieving eyes, there was Louis awkwardly backpedaling after absorbing a vicious left hook. The crowd came to its feet again, and the stands of the Polo Grounds trembled and shook as the hunted became the hunter. For the first time in his reign as champion, Louis was in full retreat, dazed and staggering, and no one was more grateful than the Brown Bomber when the bell finally rang. It would be if world title fights in 1941 had been 12 rounds instead of 15, Billy Conn would have scored a tremendous upset by taking a close decision and winning the heavyweight championship of the world. All knew the fight now belonged to Conn. Not only was he ahead on points, but he was dictating the terms and had barely shaken Lewis in the round that just ended. All he had to do was box smartly, and the title was his. All he had to do was box smartly, and the title was his. But there were 3 rounds to go, and Conn was about to make his first and last serious error in ring strategy that night as the bell rang and the huge crowd roared in anticipation of the 13th round. Conn was about to make his first and last mistake. And that's how he ended up. Okay, let's talk about what happened in the 13th round. Conn just couldn't help being greedy, or as some would say later, too Irish. He wanted to pick up where he had left off at the end of round 12 and pursued a knockout that was so close he could taste it. He moved directly to the champion, cuffing him with a hard 1-2 to start the soon-to-be final round. Meanwhile, Joe, who had just been told by trainer Blackburn that he needed a knockout to win, responded with appropriate urgency. The two went toe-to-toe as Conn decided to push his luck and stay in the trenches with the bigger, more powerful man, trading punch for punch with one of the best finishers in boxing history. The intense exchange bringing the crowd to its feet again as the challenger unleashed another wild flurry of blows. But then the inevitable happened. Okay? The inevitable happened. Okay, we'll finish this tomorrow. No, I'm just kidding. Then the inevitable happened. A heavy right from Lewis staggered Conn and forced him to hold, and it was obvious to all he was in dire trouble. Joe doggedly pursued, and what followed was a methodical battery. Flush right hands and uppercuts took their toll before a vicious right to the body rendered Conn helpless. Gone was all of the technical wizardry. The Pittsburgh Kid, gone was all of technical wizardry of the Pittsburgh Kid as he dazedly followed Lewis around the ring and absorbed punishment. A final finishing volley of amazingly accurate power punches decided the battle. The last blow, a right hand to the head that left Conn groveling in the resin dust. Billy tried, but could not beat the count. The referee waved his arms and extinguished the brave challenger's hopes of making history. The fight finally decided by Conn being too brave and the Brown Bomber just being too powerful. Billy Conn almost changed history, man. Al Booker in the building. Talk about some of your old fights today, Al Booker. Yeah, we went on the Billy Conn, Joe Lewis, but salute Al Booker. We talked about Willie Pep and Sandy Sadler. We're going to do a few more old fights coming up in the future. Yeah, there they are. Great fight. They had a second fight. Joe Lewis stopped in the 8th round in the second one. Now, as the tale goes, when Lewis exited the ring, he encountered his manager, John Roxborough, who stood with a cigar protruding from the corner of his mouth. Lewis looked at him and asked, "How many of those did you swallow tonight?" Joe didn't wait for an answer. Roxborough didn't offer one. After all, everyone at the Polo Grounds had swallowed hard more than once that night, having been thrilled by one of the finest and most dramatic championship fights in boxing history. Conn got greedy. He had it. All he had to do was bring it home, finish it. But he got greedy, started talking to Joe Lewis, and he almost got Joe out of there at the end of the 12th round, so In 13, Khan came out there to finish it, but he couldn't do it. Couldn't get her done. And Joe Louis finished him. Yep. Tomorrow is Wednesday. I think we're going to talk about some power punchers tomorrow. Okay? Like Ernie Shavers, George Foreman. We're going to look at the hardest puncher in each weight class tomorrow, too. From heavyweight to minimum weight, 105. We're going to look at some all-time great power punchers and the hardest puncher in each weight division tomorrow. Okay? Heavyweight all the way down to 105, minimum weight. That's tomorrow on Cast Sports. Yeah. I hope everybody enjoyed today's show. We got a little time left. Yeah. We had let me get my book. We're gonna talk about some more great heavyweights to close it out. We got a few minutes left. But I'm telling y'all, man, Manny Pacquiao win this fight Saturday. It's gonna be the best thing since they invented the airplane. Watch. Better than Muhammad Ali, Joe Louis, Sugar Ray Robinson, Sam Lightfoot, Rocky. They're gonna be saying he can beat all of them in the same night, and we aren't gonna be able to hit the end of it. Barrios has got to win this fight, man. Please. But it might be fixed. It might be setting up. Whenever it's up, Manny and Floyd fight for the welterweight title. A real major belt. What is Barrios had? A WBC? WB something. I think it's a WBC. Yeah. So man, I hope Barrios can pull it off. Manny is 48, right? I was looking at Chris Algerian, the guy on Fight Hype, talking about it yesterday. They talked about how Manny's skills is diminished, but it is Manny, so Algerian was kind of talking like he think Manny's gonna do it. So man, I hope not. I really do. You don't need no Manny Pacquiao coming back being champion. And then we got to hear about how great he is, the greatest fighter ever, and all that kind of nonsense. Because that's what they're going to do. Let him mess around and win. It's going to be the greatest thing since the invention of the space shuttle. Manny Pacquiao. And that's Saturday, right? I think it's this weekend. Oh, let me check real quick. The 19th. Yeah. I just talked about that in the opening because Barrios was number 3 at welterweight, right? Yeah. It's Saturday. July 19th. Yeah. Going up against Manny Pacquiao, Mario Barrios for the WBC. No. Yeah, WB Barrios has the WBC. Right. Okay. Yeah. That's Saturday. Who y'all think gonna win? You think Manny can pull it off? Anybody think Manny can pull it off? He is 48, so I don't know. I don't know how he got back in there and getting the title shot, though. Haven't fought since 2021. How did he do that? Man, I done lost the subscription. Who took the subscription back from me? I had 938 when I started. Now I got 937. Man. Wow. Yeah, we're going to talk about some power punches tomorrow, though. The hardest puncher in every weight division. Who is that heavyweight? George Foreman or Ernie Shavers? That's a good question. That is a good question. Foreman had the more accomplished career, you know. Shavers was never champion, but most people that fought both of them said it was Shavers. Was a harder puncher than Foreman. So Foreman was the better more skilled fighter, I would say. But I don't know. That's a good one between Foreman and Shane. Either way, you can't be mad. But I'm going to see all the way from heavyweight to minimum weight tomorrow. It's really going to be a good one. So make sure you tune in for that. We got a couple of cards Saturday, though. I'm trying to pull them up now. Take a quick look before we get out of here. Appreciate everybody for stopping through today. Algeria Thursday is the country we're going to take a look at. We're going around the world looking at little boxing history. And well, not every country. In every country I can find a little boxing history in. That's going to be on Thursdays, just like the boxing in the States. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, it's Saturday. That Pacquiao Barrios card. That's the 19th. WBC welterweight title. And they already got Pacquiao named first. Like he the A-side. Barrios is the champion. Wow. This is crazy. But we got another good one on there though. The rematch between Fundora and Tim Tszyu. The rematch of the bloodbath, remember? Yeah. For Fundora's WBC and WBO. I think he took the WBO from Tszyu, right? Pitbull on there. This is Pitbull's first fight since he lost to Rock. Or did he fight somebody? I'm not sure. But this can be a good one too. Figueroa and Joey Gonzalez can be good. And Gary Antoine is defending his title. I think that's his first title defense, right? No, this is not Gary. This is Gary Russell Jr. back in action. Wow. Not Gary Antoine, Gary Russell Jr. Didn't this his first fight since Maxeo? Wow. And guess what? Maxeo is on the card too. Not against each other. Gary Jr. is fighting Hugo Castaneda. And Maxeo is fighting Jorge Cuellar. Then we got the one from London. Usyk and Dubois. That's Saturday too. Big weekend of fights. The 19th is Saturday, right? What's today? 50. Yeah. Big weekend of fights, man. I tell you, summer is heating up and boxing is heating up. Yeah. The Zone pay-per-view. Damn, I gotta spend some more money, man. I got to see that one, Usyk and Dubois. Man. Okay, and I'm not paying no money for no Pacquiao and Barrios, so I won't be seeing that. But I don't know. That's a good card, man. Damn. Driving me to the poorhouse. Then we got one out of Frisco, Texas. This is on. I subscribe to the regular Zone. Jesse Bam. Okay, all this is Saturday. All of this is Saturday. Jesse Bam in action. Wow. Diego Pacheco on that card and Trevor McCombie. That could be good. That could be a good matchup. Pacheco and McCombie. Great. Another great weekend of fight. And then for the fourth card Saturday from Sheffield, England, we got the women. Marie Connon versus Nicola Hopewell. Okay. That's for Connon's. I think it's vacant. It's no title on the line. No title on the line. They're just the main event. That's a lot of UK fighters. So that's 4 cards Saturday. Wow. Wait. Big weekend of boxing. Again. That is great. Yeah, you right, Al Booger. They out of control. Yeah. This is first fight since Maxeo, right, Al Booker? But what was that, like 2023? Yeah, I thought it was Gary Antoine at first, but no, it's Gary Russell Jr. Gary Jr. back in there, man. Yeah. You can't pay for all these fights, man. We not millionaires, you know. Man. But I'm gonna see both. I want to see Gary and Pitbull is on the card. I like Pitbull, so I gotta get it. And then, like you said, I gotta get that app first. And then the other one, that's the Manny with Pitbull and all of them with Gary and Antoine. And then you gotta get Usyk and Dubois. That one, gotta see that one. So, what can you do? But yeah, man, that's another good weekend of fights after last weekend. That women's card Friday was fire. I want Shadeja and Franchon to run it back now because that will be undisputed. Each of them got two of the 4 major titles, right? So yeah, they need to run that back now. Anybody heard any talk of that? Shadeja and Franchon running it back? I heard somebody mention Shadeja and Clarissa. No, I'd rather see Shadeja and Franchon. That would be undisputed at 168. Shadeja said she wanted to be undisputed. Well, Franchon got the other two. One fight away from undisputed. That was a good fight between her and Savannah, though. I thought Savannah was going to win. I was leading Savannah going in, but yeah, Shadeja pulled it out. I thought Savannah's experience, I knew it was going to be close, but I thought Savannah's experience would have been the difference, but no. Shadeja did a lot better than she did in the Franchon fight. I was disappointed in that fight. She didn't really compete in that fight. Well, but it's hard against Franchon because Franchon is very physical, It's hard to fight somebody like Franchon. It's almost like a WWF match, But yeah, I hope Franchon make Franchon and Shadeja next. That's the fight in women's boxing. That's one of the big ones in women's boxing. Might be the bigger one, Franchon been trolling her. Al Booger, okay. She don't want to fight for why? I thought she wanted to be undisputed. Damn, that's one fight away from undisputed. That's crazy. Plus, they'll get paid too. Jake Paul handled that one. Jake could get him paid. She fought on MVP. This was MVP Friday, right? Yeah, Jake could put it together. Jake is a very good promoter. He might still get it once he throw that money at him. Yeah, I don't understand why you don't want to be undisputed. I mean, it's a lot of sanctioning fees, but hey, it's history too, But I don't know. Okay, but tomorrow is we're going to talk about some hard punches, and we're going to list the hardest puncher in every weight class tomorrow. So we're going to see who it is at heavyweight, Foreman or Shaver. Or is it a tie? No, I can't have no ties, Cass. Come on, man. Got to be one or the other. But I appreciate everybody for coming through today, 1,000%. Okay? Al Booger, the Boxing Mania Podcast Plus, Mike Mazik, Mike Rim, Crush the Legend, and Miss Cass. Appreciate everybody for stopping through. We'll be back tomorrow with another Cass Sports at 2 p.m. Because if it's 2 p.m., if it's Monday through Friday at 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Damn, I messed that up bad. And I say that every day. Maybe I need to write it down. But everybody have a great afternoon. I will holler at y'all tomorrow.